I don't work on car audio. I don't know how much clearer I can make it than that. I've never worked on car audio, and I never intend to work on car audio. And I tell people I don't work on car audio. But one fella, he asked me to look at his amplifier because he says it's making a crackling sound when he goes over a bump. So I made an exception, and I'm regretting it already. Every so often I get something so absolutely ridiculous, and despite the fact that I tell people, no, I don't work on car audio, and yet this arrives at my door. This is a Soundstream Transula power amplifier. I'm told it's 1500 watts, and apparently when it goes over a speed bump, it makes a big loud crackling noise, and the owner feels it's something that's just loose. So we're going to look at it and see whether it's something that's just loose. I don't even have the capability to power this thing up because my power supply is limited to 10 amps at 12 volts. Actually, it's 12 to 32 volts, but it's 10 amps. And guaranteed, when this thing fires up, the inrush is going to exceed the maximum power that my little power supply can supply. So I don't even know that I can power this thing up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it up. We're going to look for, he figures it's on the input. He figures over on the inputs over here is where the problem is. So we're going to do an inspection and see whether it is just a loose connection. Because as the owner says, whenever he hits a bump, he hears a crackle come out of the speakers. So we're going to take a look at it, even though it's something I normally wouldn't look at. And normally if someone came to me and said, I've got a car stereo, I'll say, no, I don't work on car stereos. I don't. This showed up. We're going to give it a quick look. Start out by removing the screws on the bottom because that's where the bottom of the circuit board would be, and that's where the connectors are going to connect. And there's a good chance if it's going to be a loose connection, it'll be on this side. Remove the screws on the bottom cover. Should lift off. Well, there's one circuit board. Now again, I'm going to be looking at where these plugs all connect and see if they're loose. I guess I got to pull the top off it though, because I was suspecting this to be the bottom side of the circuit board, but it's actually not. It's the top side. I'll next pull the side cover here, which is a combination of 3mm hex keys and Phillips. You know, because they couldn't just use the same fastener all the way around. No, we have to use a combination of hex keys and Phillips screws. And hopefully I can get to where these are soldered on here. Again, I won't know until I get into it. And I told the fella I'm not spending a lot of time on it, because I don't know anything about these units. I don't know anything about their design, and I don't have any schematics for them, and I don't feel like looking for them. And it's not like this guy couldn't afford to pay, because I've been to his place. I know what he's got for toys, and he's got lots of toys. He's got about a dozen cars, including a monster truck, big Tonka monster truck. The fella that owns this thing clearly can afford to repair it. It's just that I don't do car stereos. Okay, wonderful. And the hits just keep on coming. So this is a giant heatsink on this side. As you can see, the circuit board is kind of sandwiched on a heatsink. So as far as getting at any of this, to do any work on this thing whatsoever, is going to require, if you have to get to this side of the heatsink to do any soldering, even to these end connectors here, I'm going to see if I can see if it's bad on the input. But you can't get the board out. The only way to do this would be to remove all of the output transistors, like undo all the heat sinking over here. Can you guys see what I'm looking at? Take these all out, take out all these clips, so that the transistors can all be popped away from the heatsink, and then slide the entire board out to work on it. And then put it all the way back in and reattach everything for testing. You can now, I think, understand why I don't work on car audio, and why this one here, likely, I'm just going to tell the guy, look, it's nothing minor. This is a major job. You're going to be looking at major dollars, and I don't care how much you want to spend on it. I don't want to work on it. And you'll see why in a minute. Because I don't work on car audio. Can I make that any clearer for anybody wanting to ask me? I don't work on car audio. Looking down on the board, and I know you guys can't see it, but one of the connections doesn't look to be great. I don't know if I can get a shot of it on camera. It's in an awkward position to try to see it. You probably won't be able to see it on camera, but one of these connections here on the input, this is the input, this one. This other plug here is an output to feed into another amplifier. This switch looks to be a bit bent. But that's an output for full range or sub going to the output ports. This one's the input port, whether it's full range or sub. Input controls, input level control, crossover frequency, etc. And then some switches. But the only thing that looks like it might be possibly a bad connection is on one of these inputs here. This one pin here looks to be a little bit bad. What I'm going to do, and the only thing I'm going to do on this unit, is I'm going to try to get in with my soldering iron and just resolder that. And I'm going to give it back to him and just say, hey, you know what, try it. See whether it works. Other than that, I'm not going to do anything on this unit because of the amount of work required just to get the board out. And here's another thing. You see, this board doesn't have any support. Look at that. Look at that. I just have to touch it. Look at the flex. Okay? This is in a big monster truck. Now, when I say monster truck, I got a picture of his truck. I'll show you the truck this thing came out of. You will not believe it. That's the truck that it came out of. Yes, that's a semi. He's taken a semi and turned it into a pickup truck. That's what this amp is for. So I don't know whether you guys are going to be able to see what I'm doing or not. It's even tough for me to see it here. But I'm going to just try to resolder this connector here where it goes into the board, because I can actually get to the edge here, because these look like they could be kind of cracked, and that would certainly be with in line with what he said. He goes over a bump and he hears like a crackling sound, so it could be just the connector is a little bit loose. I'll try to get to the one at the back there if I can. Again, I don't have any room to work on this thing, so I'm kind of I'll have to inspect this even closer to make sure that there's no bridges, but I don't think so. And again, that's about all I'm going to do on this. And if it fixes it, great. If it doesn't, well, we tried. And by I say we tried, I mean I tried, but my heart is not in working on this, because I don't work on car stereos. I don't care how much I'm offered. They're just a pain in the ass to work on. I've never worked on car stereos. I never intend to start working on car stereos, especially big units like this, because yeah, they're expensive, and you know, they say handcrafted in the USA, but again, not designed for easy repair, right? And there's no board support on here. This is a huge circuit board that's got large capacitors on it and fans mounted on it, and there's no support whatsoever. Now, I mean, just look at the circuit board. Like, this thing is 3 feet long, or close to it. I can actually measure that, because this thing's huge. This thing's it's probably 30 inches. Let me grab a measuring stick. We'll see how big this circuit board is. I mean, it's big. What did I guess, 30 inches? Okay, I was off by 1. It's 29 inches. Okay, this circuit board is 29 inches long by 8 inches wide. You see, companies like Sony would never do something like that. I don't think any other companies would do anything like that. They would have a separate board. They would have a power supply board, and they would have an amplifier board, or maybe 2 amplifier boards. And they would be all supported, modular, so you could take them out. In this case, this entire board, there's no support. The only support it's got is along the edges and the components that are soldered down to it. But there's no screws holding it in place. There's no standoffs. There's no support. So this is in your car, in a big truck, with the tunes blasting, where you can hear it a block and a half away. So there's lots of vibration just from the subwoofers, and you're bouncing around in the truck. That's going to bounce this board. And bouncing this board, I mean, you can see the amount of flex it's got. I'm not even putting much on it, but it's got a lot of flex. And when you've got a circuit board that's got that much slack, you're asking for trouble in an amplifier like this. I mean, look, I can just touch it. You can see that it flexes. There's not really any support. Sure, the connectors on the end here, the connectors on the end could supply some support where these are screwed down into the plastic. But the other screws just go into these metal heat sinks, so there's not really any board support. And that's another reason why I don't want to work on it. Because with a board that's that big, with no support on it, with fans on it, they're going to be creating vibrations themselves, and all the external vibrations from the actual sound and from going over bumps. It's no wonder that it's connections that are broken. Certainly the ones on the inputs over here, or is it these ones here? On the inputs over here, there was a few of them that looked like they were cracked. Those are the only ones I could see. There's probably other cracked connections, other places on the board that I'm never going to see because I'm not going to go to the trouble of taking this thing all apart. You got to remove all these clips, right? There's what are there? There's 32 of them, I think. I counted 16 per side. So there's 32 of these compression clips that are on there that hold the transistors in place. They're a pain in the ass to get off and back on. They have to strip all the transistors out, take all the heat sink off, all the heat sinks off, replace all the heat sink compound to put it back together for testing. No, I'm going to leave it at this and let the guy know, sorry, well, he can try it because I did resolder those connectors on the end, and if it's more than that, then I'm not even going to worry about it. And I set him up for that but I let him leave it with me. I said, I'll take a quick look at it. If it's something on the input that's easy to get to, we'll do it. Otherwise, forget it. I don't know if you guys can see it any better from this vantage point, but these are the ones that looked a little bit questionable when I wiggled it here. These ones on the edge here, but again, you can see how much flex there is. I mean, for that matter, since there's no support, that board, if it was going over a big enough bounce, that board could actually make, and it does make contact with the heatsink. And I don't have to put much on there to do it. That's just, there should be standoffs on here, right? There should be standoffs on this board to prevent anything like that from happening. And looking down there, I don't see any standoffs. Shine my flashlight down there. I don't see any standoffs. Yeah. I do see lights up in here that have fallen off. They're just hanging by their wires because the hot snot they use to attach them, I guess, so there's a ring of light that comes out around here. There are lights in it to make the unit glow, probably blue. Probably has blue LEDs in it so that you get a blue glow coming out from around here. But the LEDs, strips of LEDs that they glued on are just sitting on top of the heatsink. They've fallen down. Again, to get at it, to re-glue them would require taking out all these screws. That's just going to remove the heatsink from the cabinet, and to get at them to re-glue them. It's not like they're touching anything. They're in plastic. They're in plastic holders, but they are definitely just laying there in free space. So I'm going to throw this back together and get a hold of the fella and tell him that he can try that out, see whether I solved anything. So again, I don't have any means to power it up. I don't have enough power here to power this thing up. Car battery would work pretty good, but don't have one of those kicking around either. The battery in my car probably wouldn't even start this thing. It's a very small AGM battery in my car. Being a plug-in hybrid EV, the 12-volt battery, all it's there for is just to keep the computer alive. It doesn't start the engines. It doesn't do anything. It's just there to keep the computer alive. When you hit the start button or the power button, it closes a contactor in the 360 volt battery pack, which then turns on an inverter, which charges the battery. But as far as the 12 volt side of things go, it's there only for one reason. Well, it runs all of the 12 volt electronics. the stereo and the lights and so forth that run on 12 volts, but typically they're not being used unless the vehicle is turned on. And in that case, it's the high voltage battery that's being run through an inverter to provide 12 volts for the 12 volt equipment. So can't just hook it up to my car battery, because my car battery wouldn't have the capacity. It would run it down pretty quick and probably damage it in the process. Check this out. The screws that hold it together, they actually just wedge in between the slot. There's no actual holes to thread them into. This just sits on there, and the screws go in between the slots along the edge of the heatsink. That's what holds the bottom on. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.